They're gonna kill the love of my life.
Casey!
If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous!
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide, now playing. Rated PG-13, may be inappropriate for children under 13.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. You've reached Venus Unplugged. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt. And what we do at this broadcast is we talk about and explore all things Venusian, from the archetype of Venus, beauty, heartbreak, mythology, dreams, whatever kind of we want to explore, both in the feminine, in men and in women, and in the world. So what I have decided to reach you as a spring treat, last week I did not broadcast because I had a visitation from illness. It was a great teaching on how fortunate every day is, because it was a really bad flu. And but it was also renewal, and I gave it my all, got sick as a dog, and just didn't fight it, and spent 3.5 days in the underworld in a deep sleep, which is always renewing, and came up again. Still have a little bit of it, but so if the flu comes to visit, that's your lover for the weekend or the week, and just let it be and take care of yourself. So I am going to talk about the major arcana in the tarot. Now, for those of you that are not interested in the esoteric, which I don't know anybody who really isn't in some way, what the tarot, so this doesn't have to be, professional tarot things, because that's not what I'm doing. What I want to do here is the approach, because part of thinking in a Venusian way is, not through a critical thinking. Not that Venus can't be as sly as a little fox. Of course she can be. But when we learn to think in a mythological sense, in the dream time, every language has its nuances, and there is a universe of symbolism, languages, ways to approach. The most important thing on approaching any one of these esoteric sciences is with respect. If you're going to use it like your bitch, don't do it. It will bite you in the ass. I've seen people play around with the tarot, and it's just, dumb, because it's their attitude. So we would need a respectful attitude, not going in the reverse of, complete idiots, where it's like, oh my God, the tarot says, or the death card came up, and we take everything literally. When we approach anything from the sacred, also, the same thing as when we approach art. People don't realize when we're in the presence of art, it's looking at us. It's called a perspectivo. And the art is perceiving you as you are perceiving it. Anything that you're observing, and of course this is being proven out more and more in physics. So today, the Fool, the symbol of the Fool. Now, for those who want to study tarot, it's a wonderful way for meditation. It is a wonderful way for reflection. It's not necessarily predictive. Originally, all divination was done in the temples and in the churches. So divination, so in this case, it's this set of symbols, of images on cards that have evolved almost like mandalas. There's divination of the heavens, of astrology, which we all know that one. We can read the birds. We can read waters. We can. Years ago, I used to do bark, the Druid bark, where you would throw the actual bark and transcribe. So whatever it is, I mean, at this point, of course, I was born the seventh child of the seventh child. So, I was born with a gift, which for a long time felt like a curse. I mean, so at this point, I could look at a bowl of pasta and be getting images. And we look for signs. We are meaning-making humans. We look for meaning. And actually, some people deny meaning. That doesn't mean anything. That's ridiculous. It is what it is. Okay, for you it is. I wouldn't want to be inside your head because it ain't no fun. You don't have any flying fabulous colors going on in your imagination. So the Fool, which is the 0 or the first card, okay. Now, it is said amongst the wise ones in the esoteric that if we ever lost all books of knowledge and wisdom, God forbid what a curse that would be, but if we had a deck of tarot cards, we would be able to access all wisdom, past, present, and future, considering when we're in this space of meditation, contemplation, observation, we're activating part of our psyche. And the Fool represents, it can be a trickster. Now, the trickster archetype is the one that tricks us into learning something or tricks us into an insight. It's usually hilarious after the fact, or your best friend thinks it's hilarious but won't tell you till after you're over the tragedy. The trickster is the truth and the lie and the truth. The archetype of the trickster is very different than the archetype of the devil or the tarot card of the devil. The trickster is part of ourselves that tricks us in spite of ourselves. It will set up a situation, and so that we can learn. And so it tricks us into something, or it has us misinterpret something. And then we think, oh, we're off and running, and this is the way that it's going to be. And, of course, it's complete opposite, but we learn. And if we're going to work with the tarot, now you don't traditionally with tarot cards, they need to be given to you, so you can have a friend give them to you. If you don't feel like purchasing a set of tarot cards, no need. You can kind of download an image. So you're going to download the Fool. And so the way we approach this, it's a teaching. And one of the cards in and of themselves have no power, but it is the power of symbol that transforms. So these are working tools. They do not have to be for divination. They can be for inspiration. They can be a reminder. Let's say you're having a really rough day, or you're getting so twisted over being way too serious about something that you've lost your sense of humor, which now that to me has to be hell. A whole universe of people that can't laugh. And the thing that we laugh about, and the trickster is always kind of, BFF with the shadow. Those two have a great time together, tricking us, and then we begin to see like, I understand now. It could be a negative trickster where somebody's just kind of lying. Wants to make a fool, and that's cruel. and if we have a connection to the Fool, or we need to, as I said, we need to be a little more lighthearted. The Fool was also kind of the shadow of the king, kind of the king's spy. So what would that look like inside? So whatever is our ruling principle, let's say it's a very kind of serious king, very Saturnian king. It's like, I will rule, with absolute lord. and no sense, but just, because I said, or it's my way. The Fool will always be behind that, tripping us up, where somebody is very, very rigid and they have to have it by the rules, and kind of they fall off a stage or something. That's the trickster. That's the Fool. And the Fool isn't laughing at someone. It's with someone. It's laughing. It's merriment with life, not against it. Not a sadistic cruelty. The Fool is not sadistic. It can be very, very sophisticated. And so if we need a little, maybe even tomfoolery, or just a little lightheartedness, or you have forgotten to laugh, which we can do, especially when heartbroken, take the image of the Fool. If you have a set of tarot cards, take that 0 card, the Fool, and carry it with you, and look at it, and meditate on it. And there's, at this point, hundreds of different tarot decks, so, you pick a deck that appeals to your visual, and that's important. And what's interesting about these images, they are like mandalas. You'll just notice one little thing. You can read the instructions. That can give you a pointer, and it's always good to use scholarship and intuition. This also helps you trust your intuition. I actually started to use tarot because it was like, where am I getting this shit from? It'd be like, bong, and then people would get caught up in, well, why are you saying that? It'd be like, I don't know, the voices in my head are saying it. And then I decided, well, if I put the tarot out, at least there's something tangible to look at. And it helps. So with this image of the Fool as the king's spy, so what would be the king in you? What would be the superior is probably the wrong word. Who's ruling? Like it could be a mean old king, just really being cruel to you. And so you would use the Fool, or you would reverse things. You would use that attitude to change things around. Or, and it's always good to have a Fool as a good friend, because they can always find something funny, and very often people who have a really marvelous sense of humor are deeply serious in the way that they can contain the depth of what they see is through using the Fool, reversing things, playing with things. Now, divination is based on the law of synchronicity. Synchronicity is, it's not using what they call causal thinking. Causal thinking is, A equals B equals C. It's kind of got a straight line. I don't know a lot of people like this, but I know it exists because, they have to have everything. It's got to make sense to them, okay? But in divination and in synchronicity, you're using synchronistic thinking. So that happens in a different way. That's a different part of what we understand. It's more, in a sense, clusters, where your mind can put things together. And, the bottom line, I mean, you can read about synchronicity from here to the end of the world because it's such a fascinating principle. It is the principle behind all divination, meaningful coincidences. According to the Jungian way, which is my philosophical bend, something is going on inside, and suddenly an outer event mirrors it. And it's like that bong moment. Like, wow. Now, it's not magical thinking, Magical thinking, we want something to happen, so we see it, and it's like, oh, it's a sign. It's like, no, that's not a sign. A sign really does appear in some kind of miraculous or the miracle of the ordinary. It just suddenly shows up, and it's like, wow. Or it's even like, finding a penny, He said that you find a penny that your guardian angel sends pennies, which is very sweet and beautiful, and it's exciting. And a fool will believe that, such as I, because it's fun. It's not going to make a difference to world peace by believing that. No. But it's going to make a difference in you in that moment. Wow, something special has just occurred. And I am willing to suspend my seriousness or, scientific thinking and just have a little bit of fun, knowing that is to be true. So and as I said, with these tarot cards, they give a different path of development. We could also look at the 22 major arcana as the road to individuation, which is the whole principle of the Jungian work. What is it that, what are the different stages that we need towards our own wholeness? Now, these stages do not happen in chronological order. Sometimes it's all happening at once. So in the system of tarot and in the Fool, the Fool part of us will go where angels wouldn't dare, would be willing to love with all our heart, even if it is unrequited, because in that depth of heart, you'll find yourself. You'll find the archetype of love. All right, so you may not get the person of your choice, but you will know that love. Yes, the world will call you a fool. Don't get so hung up on what the world thinks. We're not in a lot of danger with that. It doesn't really think. It certainly doesn't think with the heart. So with the we can see things. Now it's always the fool in fairy tales. The third child, the village idiot, the fool. Everybody laughs at. Look at them; they're walking backwards, or they're talking to a horse. People will look at that and say, "That's foolishness." Or it's foolishness to listen to your dreams. Yeah, not really. So the aspect of the Fool, it urges us into life. No guarantees. It just says, jump. What could happen? Well, of course, I've lived to regret those thoughts too. But when I look over it, or you retell the tale, and you see your honest foolishness and the joy it can bring, and that you're participating in this impossibility, because you can't have a completely serious plan and with no fool, it just doesn't give an energy, a possibility. We're also willing to look at or see meaning where most people won't see meaning. We can put things together, which is what synchronistic thinking is. The inner and the outer. So there was this one time, this was many years ago, and it was synchronistic. It was also prophetic. And I had a dream, and I never dreamed of tarot cards, right? And I had it, and in this dream that I did what they call the Celtic spread, which is the Celtic cross. And it wasn't such a great spread there. It had some real intense warnings. And my first client of the day, I did the tarot. Now, some people don't like the tarot, and sometimes when I'm working with very religious people, they don't want to look at that. So they don't have to do that. And so I did the spread, and there it was, the exact spread, and it had some real sinister manifestations. So I saw that. I folded those up. I told the woman that I excused myself and I'm sorry, but I cannot read for you, and I will not read for you. I will not open to this. And I asked her to leave because she didn't realize that it wasn't purposeful, but that she was being used because of all her negativity as a conduit for not such good stuff, for that thing, live, spell backwards stuff. And so I was warned in the dream. It was an inner image that happened externally in a very dramatic way. I took the hint. Now, somebody could say, that's foolish, or that's superstitious. No, not really. That's pretty darn accurate. And although, like I said, the woman, she wasn't premeditated, she didn't know, but because where she was in her life, she didn't realize that she was being a conduit for not such good stuff. And I wasn't going to dance with that. So I asked her to leave. And it kept the both of us safe. It protected her. It protected me. And then, that happens. Very serious things happen. Or joyful, meaningful coincidences can happen. And that's part of the Fool energy. There's also, it's called the Fool's Mass. And that is when all the rituals of the Mass are reversed. And the people become the priests and priestesses, and everything gets reversed. We have that in Mardi Gras. Right before Lent, everything reverses itself. The Fool, the shadow, it all begins to dance and play because we're going to get real serious and sacrifice something and get really conscious for this Lenten season and prepare for this ritual of the Lenten season, this sacrifice. It's also why we celebrate after something. But if you're Irish, you celebrate before and after. You just any excuse will do. So in all traditions, there is always at least one ceremony or ritual for the Fool. There, the way that it could be the Fool, it could be the jester, right? Very often, the colorful costumes that the Fool wears, everything is disjointed. There's usually a little dog, and the dog is the psychopomp. And the Fool is always at the edge, at where we're going to just make the quantum leap. Wherever you land, it's all sacred ground. Now, there's some people that are just so, they're just scrambled eggs. They're just like so loosey-goosey. There's no critical thinking. Now, you're not going to go for that, but you are going to use the Fool card to bring more joy into life. All right, it's a symbol of air and the bellows of the air, what blows. So it could be a buffoon, right, or a windbag, or somebody who's full of hot air, and go like, oh, God, that person's a fool. And what happens when we carry one of these tarot cards around and look at it, and each day you'll see something different. And you can use the 22 major arcana to facilitate. And it emphasizes the meaning. It gives us a sense. It's a signal to the unconscious, because we don't have time to read 42, scholarly books on what it all means. We can just take a picture and what that is about. Comedians ruled by the Fool. And the Fool always encompasses the opposite. So if you want to know what's opposite, ask the Fool within. Now, it may say it in rap music. It may say it in poetry. It may say it in a trickster manner. It doesn't give things up in such a logical sequence. It can be a riddle. That's why children love riddles. It delights them because they know that there's something opposite going on, and they're willing to discover the opposite, or they know that the opposite is there, but they don't know how to get to it. Children know it's always dualistic. So the Fool, it's this aspect. It can be mankind in its folly, where humanity is doing something very foolish, but that wouldn't necessarily be. Or we can. Well, of course we can. We can say, okay, where am I being foolish? Where have I stayed too long? Where do I need to change my course? Let the Fool help you. Or how do I get out of this in a playful manner? How do I discover my fire? Because the Fool is also an image of fire. And it echoes the image of light and energy. And the Fool, as I said, loves puns. And the Fool in us travels lightly. Doesn't burden ourselves down. Very often it just has a stick and over its shoulder, and it has a scepter, and it has a little bag. It just goes. Absolutely just goes. I mean, there's an interesting, just very ordinary exercise, which would drive people crazy. Don't bring your purse with you. Just what you essentially need, your lipstick, some cash, credit cards, driver's license, just, really your basics, and leave the rest and feel unburdened. But you also feel foolish because something might happen. Nothing's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to see something you never saw before. And you're going to realize, like, holy moly, what else am I carrying around here? Leave the burdens at the door. Shake them off. Dare to be foolish. Dare to play. Dare to laugh. Most of all, when there's sorrow. Because in the opposite, and Venus, well, speaking of laughter, she is laughter. She is the laughing one. I mean, she takes things very, very seriously, but she's also willing to laugh and see what that is all about, and see what the opposite is, and then onward and upward, or whatever she's up to, okay? So also the Fool has this potential as a savior. can bring something forth that we never saw before. It's a very, very strong card. It's in many ways, the Fool is an archetypal religious figure, the divine Fool. And sometimes Maria von Franks, she sees the Fool as an aspect in the psyche of the inferior function, which we'll go into next week. So have an absolutely divinely foolish week. Allow yourself to be the Fool. That's part of our humanity, but it's also part of our holiness. So be the divine Fool. Leave home without that burden of that purse, whatever the hell we carry in that, and see the joy. So as I said, download an image of the Fool if you don't have tarot cards, but let it work with you. Let it guide you. And keep little notes about things that, you may have thought was foolish, and then you realize, wow, this is actually fun. So to the fools, well, what is it? All the world loves a fool. All right. Oh, and I hope you have looked at Christiane Northrup's fabulous book, Goddesses Never Age. I talked about foolishness. It is foolish to ever be concerned about age. But on the collective label, once again, that's the way people get stopped. I've got all these planets in Gemini, so by the time you think about age, you're already, it's just doesn't something you don't think of, but you see how many references there are to age, and people put themselves down. So dare to be ageless. Dare to be a divine, ageless fool, okay? And if somebody is rude enough to ask you your age, be foolish enough and wise enough to just ask them, what's the real question? Because I guarantee that's not the real question. And if they feel they have the right to ask that question, you have the right to ask that one. So that's one of the trick foolishness, the wise fool. All right, next week. Bye-bye.